Please, Brojo, go ahead and give the intro.
Oh, there we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Breakfast with Bunto and yours truly, Brother John. Say hi, Bunto.
Hello, welcome to the show. Have great panel participants, including, Pyong, Carlton, Lyrics, and yours truly, and Brojo. Oh, of course, Pyong just bailed on us. Well, let's see if we can wrap the show.
I just 1 second. I got to take the headphones off because you get like buzzes and stuff when I go in the kitchen.
Okay.
Not a problem. Not a
Well,
problem.
all right. Well, how's everybody's week going so far? Is it nondescript or eventful? Carlton?
No,
Hey,
still,
hi, Lyrics.
still muted.
How about you, Lyrics?
Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'll be right back.
All right, Lyric, how's your week going?
I don't even know, dude.
Yeah. Days.
Hey, Lyrics, did you steal Nate Cunningham's hat?
Nah, I had this hat like fucking before he was born, dude. How old is Nate? He looks like he's.
You put some glass. You put on some glasses. You could probably get away with looking like Nate.
The anti-Nate.
I usually do the reverse thing here like this.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's true. Okay, cool.
When I had hair, you know.
All right, well, let's see if we can just jump back into the stream that we were doing before. Okay, just to clue in our audience, we were talking about the steps that they're taking in Oklahoma to prevent the eventuality of marriage equality. In an article, they're saying that the House passed a just okayed bill to punish any employee of the state of Oklahoma. What would you say? Allowing a gay marriage license?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you want me to just read a little bit of this article?
Yeah, please go ahead, Punk. Thanks.
The title of the article is from, I saw it on Reuters, Oklahoma House panel okays bill to punish licensing of gay marriage. And it says, the bill called the Preservation of Sovereignty and Marriage Act prohibits taxpayer funds, including government salaries, to be used for any activity that supports same-sex marriage. It also says that those who issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples can be subject to removal from office.
Right.
So that's the germane bit there.
I just noticed in the title of that bill, preservation of sovereignty, isn't that like the states' rights?
That's bullshit rhetoric.
Right.
You know,
the first thing that jumped out of my mouth was the states' rights people with that.
I don't know. I think that's somebody who drafted it wanted to give it a, this magnificent sounding name.
The Civil War, the War of Northern Aggression type flavor.
That's right. Matter of fact, at the end of the article, they talk about it being a battleground.
Right.
Battleground is right here.
Yeah.
Now, the question I asked Pyong, our resident legal expert, was like, in the 60s, in the civil rights era, did they have the same sort of legislation going on? Please, Pyong.
I'm the resident legal.
Yes.
What did you say?
I'm the resident legal expert.
Oh man, we're in dire straits on this show. Then
no, we're not. We are very good
legal consultant, right? Is that what they call the legal consultant or something?
The legal consultant.
I don't know if maybe I'd like the term sultan better or something.
Okay, we'll go sultan.
Sultan. No, but anyway, what was your question, Bunto?
Okay, did they have this same sort of legal approach in the 60s in their civil rights struggle?
Honestly, I don't know, Bunto. Maybe Carlton's a better person to ask about that because I shouldn't assume, Carlton, were you alive in the 60s?
He's on the phone. Is he on the phone? He's on the phone.
Oh,
he was,
okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was, yeah.
Yeah,
but
he's like 60 years old, so.
So I'm just not sure, Bunto. I haven't really studied it. I'm sure that a lot of legislation came up. There was probably state legislation that came up that was in opposition to the federal policies that were being implemented. I'm almost sure that that's the case, but I can't cite any, and frankly, I've never really looked into it. Oh, nice.
Fucking Top Gun right here, dude. Maverick.
Lyrics, are you part Asian? Because you do have an Asian look.
Or Asian? No, fuck.
Yeah, you have like an Asian.
I used to get picked on profusely when I was a kid. They used to call me Little China. Because I
Little
look-
China.
Yeah. I'm not Asian, no, I'm Scottish. I believe the eyes and the nose come from parts of my African American heritage.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I don't know. Just call me Little Chai.
There you go. Hey, everybody, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Me too. All right, Carlton, they had a question for you. What was your experience during the civil rights era? Any particular memories come to mind?
The only thing I really remember specifically about that time was I was desperate to get a date in high school.
So you really didn't even look at the civil rights struggle. You were more.
I really didn't at that time. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, and yeah, I just
No blacks.
involved. I was not involved in any real way with the world in general. I was a typical teenager at that time, and I was very sort of self-centered.
Okay, how many blacks did you know in Connecticut during the 60s?
I don't know. I didn't keep a record, nor did I keep a book.
Ballpark.
But I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't. I can tell you this. I mean, I can tell you. I used to go bowling with my dad growing up. He bowled in a league twice a week. I still remember had a black guy on his team, Chuck Roby, nicest guy I ever knew. But I mean, I there were a lot of black people. You know,
Did they ever intimate the civil rights struggle?
No.
In your meetings with them? No.
They were bowling. No, the only thing they did was when I wasn't looking occasionally, they would put cigarette butts in my soda that I was still drinking.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is terrible. I would find out the next sip that I took. And they'd all get a good chuckle out of that. But we didn't have any deep philosophical or discussions
So
on
civil rights wasn't anywhere as poignant as marriage equality today?
Oh God, no. But again, I think I mean my awareness is very different today than it was then. So it's hard for me to say whether that's because the issue is different or whether it's simply my perspective and my interest is different.
I think a lot of it has to do with the internet also.
Well, I have a question though. I just finished reading this link on that was posted out there, John, that you put out there on the Oklahoma House panel okay's bill to punish licensing of gay marriage. And I'm sorry if you guys already addressed this issue. Don't have to do it again on my account. I'll go back and re-listen to the Hangout. But what is the legal issue here between when the federal government says that the state's ban is unconstitutional, implying that same-sex marriage is constitutional, obviously, can the state then penalize or punish people or enact other legislation that would make it a punishable act for people to do what the federal government has already said is not illegal to do? In other words, where's that dividing line between federal and state in terms of the legislation?
Well, I don't know if I understand or if what I heard and what I'm going to say is entirely appropriate. But the federal jurisdiction is almost always dominant as a result of the 10th Amendment, and also in a practical way the Civil War. The Civil War really put an end to this idea that the states, are independent and there's just some loose association. The problem is that and this is what I was. Is that kind of in the vein of what you were talking about?
Yeah, I think so, and maybe I could phrase it better. Is it a fair statement to say that the relationship between state legislation versus federal legislation is that state legislation can always be more restrictive or more specific, but it cannot be less so? So if the government says if the government says minimum wage is $7 an hour, the states are free to enact legislation that say, okay, in this state minimum wage is $10 an hour, but they can't come back and say it's $5.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And that, yes, whenever there's a regulation, for example, or a piece of legislation that is supplemented by state law, that's absolutely the case. I'll just go into what I was talking about a little bit before we went live with the Hangout, and that is, when I read the article, I was a bit disappointed in the Supreme Court, because this case, the whole gay marriage thing, or same-sex marriage, the Supreme Court had an opportunity to give an opinion on this case and settle the matter. And in an administrative way, that is one of the most important functions of the Supreme Court, to settle differences of opinion amongst circuit appeals courts in the federal system. And that's exactly what we have. And I started to talk about, you know, when a case goes initially to federal court, they go into a district court, they perfect some issue for appeal, and it goes to the appellate court. If there's some dispute that remains unsolved and there's a reason for a subsequent appeal, they petition for certiorari from the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court decides whether or not they're going to hear this. The Supreme Court in the last 2 sessions, and probably far more than this, I'm not really an expert, have declined to hear this case. And whenever it was when they declined to hear it, this was probably last spring, I personally thought, you know, that's ridiculous. It's reprehensible, because you need to put this stuff to bed. You need to say, okay, this is our ruling, and this is how we're going to handle it. Right. Because the Ninth Circuit has a particular way of looking at things, the Sixth Circuit has a different way of looking at things, and they need to create, you know, a unified policy, and they didn't do it.
Is where do the laws currently lie? What jurisdiction are the laws that currently talk about recognition of marriage? In other words, when let's say someone comes over here from Germany, you know, who is it that decides whether we recognize that they are in fact legally married and that we will accept their marriage certificate from Germany? Is that done at the state level currently, or is that done at the federal level?
Marriage as a status does have some reaching into the federal system, like with regard to taxation, but marriage is typically the realm of the state.
And doesn't it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to pause there. So then doesn't it make it then logical that the Supreme Court would want to refuse to hear this? In other words, if most of our understanding or recognition of marriage already is at the state level, then shouldn't it seem that if we have an issue with same-sex marriage, that should also be resolved at the state level?
Well, that's very reasonable. Yeah, but the way that this dispute, I think, is broached is they say, okay, if the churches don't want to marry people, that's fine. That's their thing. You know, they've got their stuff that they're doing. Sure. They look at it as a sacrament, whatever. But the state affords the status of marriage certain particular rights and privileges. And so if I'm prevented from entering into a status that I'm otherwise capable of entering into on the basis of my sexual orientation, that's discriminatory. You see? So it's not necessarily an issue of a state defining what marriage is, but it's rather I'm being discriminated against. And if the state, excuse me, prohibits me from marrying someone else, the state is discriminating against me.
But yes. is that? But I don't know that I would necessarily follow that logic through, because, for example, the state then clearly discriminates on an individual's ability to buy alcohol by age. They say if you're not 21 or 18, we will not allow you to buy alcohol, but we will allow it if you're over 21. Clearly, that's age discriminatory.
Well, I wouldn't qualify that necessarily as discrimination.
I think that was a wise choice.
And also, I would say, even if, well, let's just say that it is discrimination, Carl. Okay. Discrimination occurs all the time in our systems.
Sure, exactly.
And the reason that it's typically allowed is because it serves some important purpose, and the discrimination is narrowly tailored to achieve that purpose.
Okay.
So we don't want little 10-year-olds running around drunk.
Right.
I wouldn't mind myself, but maybe that's because I don't have kids. But for the most part, we don't want the children to drink, so we have that. I mean, I'm just going along with what you're with
No,
your.
and I'm playing devil's advocate a little, but I'm trying to eke out here what makes some types of discrimination valid and legitimate, and makes other types of discrimination not that.
Probably a judicial construction. More,
All right.
I mean, to be totally honest with you, because let's forget about the kid. Well, I mean, we can continue to talk about underage drinking.
No.
But,
Let's get back to topic. Yep.
For example, affirmative action is discriminatory. Okay, but it's discriminatory. You know what I mean? Where there are
Yes. To correct a prior injustice.
Exactly. So that's the justification of that. I think that in a conversational way, when we talk about discrimination, we can say a certain class of people being treated in a particular way that is different from other
Right.
classes of people based on some kind of characteristic. So, for example, when we say affirmative action, we put into play, or the government institutionalizes policies of affirmative action where black people will be hired as firemen or something like that, a quota system or something like that. You're exactly right. The justification for that policy is prior injustice.
But couldn't we attack this issue from a different angle and resolve it? In other words, it seems that at the base of this, we're all equivocating over the word marriage, and obviously the churches want to claim jurisdiction over that word. Couldn't we resolve this by simply relegating that word to churches and changing the legal status to legally joined or a legal union, and then and rewrite the existing legislation so that all the existing rights and benefits that we get from being, quote, married now get renamed to being to those who are legally who are in a legal union, and then we're not coming to blows with the religious contingent.
That was
we're not
tried
calling it marriage. Yeah.
in the civil rights era, Carlton. That was called Brown versus Boards of Education, separate but equal.
Okay.
Well,
And
no,
it
not
failed.
really.
Oh,
The problem is that it's all about the word marriage, right? It's all about semantics. So I don't understand why religion has the privilege of being able to use the word marriage, because marriage is not an exclusively religious ceremony. It's a culture ceremony. It expands all different religions, all different cultures. It's not an exclusively Christian or Muslim or Jewish rite.
Right, but I think the problem though is we're digging our heels in on the word marriage, which is totally unimportant to the actual substantive things that are being asked. I really could care less. I don't think anybody could care less, maybe except the religious people. What
why
name
should
we
we
designate
cater
it.
to the religious people then?
Well, but because I think
Exactly.
because I think that in this case, it's literally a quick way. It's a quick way to get what we want to happen, which is actually the important piece here. The name is trivial, and if I can give you something trivial that is really meaningless and it will satiate you and you'll go away, by God, here, call it marriage, call it whatever you want. And you know what? The thing is that the common word is not going to go away. It's not going to change, but let's change it in the legal documents where it has effect. And then, although I'm not entirely sure that this would solve the issue. I think it would just, the issue would now resurrect in a different form. But nonetheless, it seemed like we could get
What
some
sounds
laws
better?
passed.
I'm married to my partner, or meet my partner. I have a civil contract.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The common use term is.
Well, okay. How about this? Pyong, did separate drinking fountains work in the 50s?
Okay. Again, I don't know. Obviously, it didn't, and it did have I believe that would have a dehumanizing effect. I think. Don't you agree? I mean,
totally.
Not Carlton, not what you're talking about with the marriage, because what I keyed upon what you were saying, Carlton, which I totally agree with, is yes, if entry into the legal status that afforded all of its rights and privileges that people who are married currently receive,
Right.
if that would be okay, then right, I don't have an issue with it. However, I'm not in the community that has been. I'm just gonna say that they've been discriminated against.
Sure.
Because I personally believe they have. Now that's not
free,
the. Yeah. So the class of individuals who have been discriminated against are now further separated. Kind of what you're talking about, Bunto. You know, where they say, okay, well, you know, you can. It's kind of at least in a descriptive way, they would be separate, meaning that they would have a different term, but all of the status would be equal. And is that true? I mean, would that satiate them? The other, and I don't know. I mean, they might be further.
No.
They might feel like they were further victimized, you know, by having to adopt this term that was, you know, kind of put together by the people who they may feel were discriminating against them. The other thing I would suggest, just for consideration, is what's wrong with using the plain meaning of marriage to describe a relationship between two people of the same sex?
There's nothing. I have nothing. There is nothing wrong with it. I'm not making that.
No.
That's why we're not going to cave into the religious people, Carlton.
No,
That's why.
I totally, I didn't mean that the way it may have come across. I don't think that you're bigoted in that way, Carlton. I don't think that.
In what way am I bigoted?
Well, I don't,
there you go, Lord.
probably in many and creative ways, but you know, I'm kind of addressing the people who would want, and they say, no, marriage is between a man and a woman. You know,
well, marriage is ordained by God, right? And God says homosexuality is a sin, then of course marriage between gay people is impossible, because that's the strict guidelines that they run by.
Right, and the point, and I think my whole point is here, and this is kind of what befuddles me a little bit. Okay, fine. If marriage is sort of the de facto legal term for that condition, fine. And if the churches also want to use that term marriage and define it differently, again, fine. I'm not forced to belong to a church. And as long as I don't get any special societal benefits from being married in the church that I wouldn't get by being married to the state, you know, why can't the state, again, and maybe this is the point here, then the state should include whoever they need to include in that.
I agree with you, Carlton. Why don't we call ours marriage, and the religious people can call theirs phony marriage?
Or they could call theirs marriage too and define it different. I don't care, because I'm not going to go to their church. So you know what? And it sounds the same no matter who says the word. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I know I'm flip-flopping here. I actually thought of throwing another monkey wrench into the works and saying, well, you know what? The theists are very they very commonly want to accuse atheism or humanism of being a religion. So, you know, the old adage about be careful what you wish for, well, what if we designate it as such and then go back to the government and say, now you need to prove a case for not including gays and lesbians because you're interfering with our religion, which says that any two human beings should be able to live together. You know, show me just cause for excluding us. You know, turn the table on them a little bit and see how it feels.
I mean, I kind of agree with the sense that, you know, the religious aspect of marriage should be kept to the church, and then the legal aspect of marriage should be something that's issued by the state. But I don't think we should stop calling it marriage if it's the legal part just because the churches don't like it. Like I guess that's where I stand.
Well, if I get married in Tennessee, Jackie, or if I get married here in Tennessee, right? My wife and I were married in Tennessee. Now, if we move to Georgia, the state of Georgia recognizes my marriage license. And if we move to California, they recognize my marriage license. Under what legislation or under what law is that that uniformity of being recognized within the United States found. Is that simply, I can't imagine that every single state has a piece of legislation that enumerates the other 49 states that they will recognize. It seems like that's got to be under at the federal level, isn't it?
And that
that would make
marriages, right?
Like, same-sex marriage should be recognized federally. I don't understand why it's not yet.
Well, there is a.
But, we're getting there. We are getting there. It's gonna happen. We're well on to federal recognition.
There wouldn't be anything on the TV if they made it legal. All right, you wouldn't be able to watch it, and people wouldn't be able to get all pissed off at each other if you actually did it. That's just the problem.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the other risk, though, when you make it federal level, right? Hypothetically, let's suppose that the right-wing conservatives, ultra-conservatives, have their sway in Congress, and let's suppose that marriage definition now only includes theists. That in order to be married, it must be under the eyes of God. Otherwise, we don't consider you married. If we put that at the federal level, with one swipe of the brush, they can divorce half of the U.S. population, or at least remove all of our benefits. And I don't think that that's a far stretch for something that they would want to see included in that type of a definition. I mean, they've been saying that all along, right? That marriage is what God has designated it. They simply haven't taken the next logical step to then say,
that realistically,
you're an atheist, you're not
Carlton,
married.
I don't think that would pass. I don't think that would pass through government.
How many times have they tried to vote against Obamacare now? Probably over 100 times.
Yeah. I know, but I'm just saying that but there is a risk to federalizing anything in that now I've only got to make a change once. And
there you go, Jeff. And introducing Jeff Keller.
The other side of the coin is once the change is made, you can't vote with your feet and move as easily as you can when one state does.
Well, that's my point, Jeff. Right.
Yeah.
So if it's at the state level and Tennessee says we got to be a theist, well, I can move to Illinois. I'm fine with that.
Well, I got a question. Why on earth why would we want government to regulate marriage anyway?
I don't know.
What's the function of the government telling you you're married or not?
I think it's only for economic
because
benefit.
of legal benefit.
Why should
the legal contract
and immigration as well?
It shouldn't be any different from a lease as far as the government's concerned.
Here we go.
Well,
in
degree, obviously, in the details it is, but in kind, it's an agreement where parties are jointly own a house, they own property together, they may have children together that needed to be provided for.
Holy cow.
Those are all things that are contractual matters as far as the law is concerned. Why are you giggling?
Because I just thought of it, Jeff. You want privatized marriage, right? In the Libertarian law.
Why wouldn't you?
Well,
Why
what do you
would
want?
you
You want government marriage? What do you want? Government marriage?
Well, I mean, if
You want the
you
government
went
to
to Hawaii and they don't count your marriage and they arrest you for some reason for.
Well, hold on just a second.
Counting
Hold on.
marriage. You're already giving the state
Well,
the right.
you're-
to say
you're
married.
in
Let me
Hold on.
address a question that Carlton brought up earlier. Carlton, when you were talking about you were married in Tennessee, you were granted a license. I'm sorry, was it Tennessee?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, and then you moved to another state, and they recognize the legitimacy of that license. That's what they call full faith and credit. It's a clause in the Constitution, the full faith and credit clause. So if you're granted a license in one state, you go to another state. Supposedly, they're supposed to recognize that it's a good license, that it's a good marriage. Now, interestingly enough, a divorce decree is one of the only decrees in all of, I guess, the law landscape that is also given full faith and credit. Being if you say that Keller goes down to Florida and he meets this 20-year-old hottie and he's like, forget it, I'm done with the old, and so he gets a divorce. So in Florida, if he gets a divorce in Florida, when he goes back to his home state, that home state will enforce the divorce decree in Florida. So that's just to address what you were talking about earlier, Carl.
Thank you.
Full faith and credit, they call it.
Yeah, there's also they used to call it reciprocity also. which in various states would have in and among themselves agreed.
Reciprocity is different, Jeff, because that is like you say, an agreement among
Right.
states.
That's an agreement between particular states. That's why, years ago, if you got a traffic ticket in another state, they would put you in jail if you couldn't pay the fine, because once you left the state, they couldn't come after you. But now you get a ticket in one state, and you can go back home, and unfortunately, it's going to appear on your driver's license and all that. So that was sort of the interstate way of getting around that. But states, recognize all kinds of local ownership claims, like your car registration and all that. When I go to Florida, they recognize that I'm the proper owner of the car and so forth. So those things, those are not insurmountable barriers. But we had an issue where the North was Supreme Court the North was supposed to recognize the ownership of slaves. So that's not always that's not always something we want everything to be recognized by all states, and actually to the chagrin of many.
Jeff, I have a question, Jeff. In the libertarian society, would there be states or would there be corporations? Like IBM?
Well, there would not be corporations in the way that we know them now.
Yeah.
Corporations would not be limited liability. They would not be any kind of
person.
They would not have persons.
Well, will like a whole region be, Dell, like Dell land and IBM land, Apple land?
Well, there couldn't be any. There would be private property, and if Dell decided to open up a community, theoretically that would be possible. I don't know why that would be in their interest to do so, but no, it would not be a corporate thing. It would be very decentralized. You might have one dispute resolution firm. I might have another. Would be like car insurance or anything else. If you had a dispute, you would call them up. But it would tend to not be geographic in nature, as far as I can tell.
But states would be okay, or would that still be too much centralized power?
Well, ideally, I would like to see an entirely private and voluntary society. States come at a huge cost in terms of our rights and in terms of the unnecessary controlling of other people who are doing peaceful things. So I would actually like to see all interactions being voluntary, but the smaller the better, typically.
So there wouldn't necessarily be a marriage license from the state of Texas. It would be.
I don't see why in the world anyone needs a license to get married. That's
freaking men.
Ludicrous. The early justifications were racial. They didn't want the
miscegenation.
Yeah, they wanted the marriage license thing came from the idea that we want to prevent the different races from mixing. So no, absolutely, that's freedom of association is a very basic thing, and the state should not be involved in it. Except if there is a state, they should merely be involved in the recording and the contractual arrangement of it. But that's it. No,
you look at you guys look at a marriage license as a invasion of privacy.
I look at what?
A marriage license as an invasion of privacy. Like the state has no business.
Well, I don't know that it's necessary to call it privacy. It's just they have no business doing it. It's an act of aggression to force people to buy a
to register themselves.
To register themselves or go to any kind of authority for approval. Now, if they're voluntarily a part of a church and that's something they feel like they need to do, that's on them. But in terms of some centralized authority imposing its will on other people, telling them whom they can marry, whom they can't, forcing them to pay for this.
It's all about the money.
Here's an interesting comment on full faith and credit. They're talking about how it applies to same-sex marriage, but they also put a note here, as noted in this article, that the clause is not applied to prohibited degrees of kinship, including cousin marriage. And it says, in couples moving from a state where cousin marriage is allowed to one where it is prohibited or a criminal offense, risk loss of benefits or criminal prosecution if moving to another state. And they go one step further. In the cousin marriage one, they said, in order to move, if you're cousins and you're married, if you were married as cousins in a state where it's legal, and you're going to move to Arizona, Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, Utah, or Wisconsin, couples must be sterilized.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they gotta pay for it too, man.
Those savages.
They gotta pay for it.
And I hate to make the logical leap here, but it would seem like if those states are so paranoid about cousins being married that they're going to require them to be sterilized so they don't reproduce, they should be all about same-sex marriage. No one's reproducing there.
Well, here's another thing. Here's another thing about incestual relationship, a brother and sister. Now, as sick as that may sound, why can't they get married as long as they get sterile? Because that seems to be the main reason why we don't allow this is because of birth defects.
Yes.
That's a good point. That's a real good point.
Even with the birth defects, I have to research this, but maybe somebody already knows this.
I'm not saying I want to learn.
I know. Oh my God.
I don't have a sister to marry anyway.
There's a new movement on G+.
But wasn't the risk of birth defects? You typically see the example of Britain's royal family, right? But even though there is some risk, I think at close, like you said, cousin marriage or brother sister, doesn't it require multiple generations for that risk to actually be meaningful?
No, because
it requires a certain amount of inbreeding.
Can we all agree here that incest is bad? Okay. Well, please, fucking please.
I'm just saying, with my sister, anybody that marries her, it's going to be a bad thing. So.
All right, back to gay marriage. Yeah, we know incest is bad, and we talked about this before, Lyrics. Remember, that because of the study, it seems like there's some kind of genetic mechanism that makes us repulse incest. This is even happening on, they've shown in animals. That will not have relations with their close, kins because of the birth defects that might happen. So there's a natural repulsion towards it.
No, I don't even care if the kid came out looking like Hercules, okay? I don't care if it was Spartacus reborn. I don't want to have sex with my sister. I'm sorry.
My God.
It's ridiculous why these topics even get brought up half the time. I mean, we're just talking and stuff, but like there are people that entertain this idea that it should be legal and shit, and I just don't want to. I don't want to be a part of it, bro.
Yeah.
So if it were legalized, would you marry your sister? I mean, is that all that's? I mean, these things happen all the time, and we have all these laws. So
I can understand why you would want bestiality illegal in your community. I can understand why you would want sibling marriage or first cousin marriage illegal in your community. That makes if at the lowest level, it makes economic sense. I can understand that. I just don't see why you have to have your marriage recognized by the state. Who are they to tell anybody who's married?
Well, again, though, if we're separating government, if a brother and a sister want to form a household,
they already do that anyway.
That's what they'll do, and a brother and a sister should be able to have the same kinds of legal claims against jointly owned property, making medical decisions, any number of these things. So the state would have nothing to do that. And to my knowledge, maybe it is in some states, but although I don't, I certainly don't approve of this for my personal morality. There's nothing against the law preventing them. There's nothing in the law preventing them from having sex or from having kids. So if we separate government from marriage, yes, people can do that, but they can do that now. We're just talking about really giving people the ability to form contracts and households in the same way that a married couple
Are
would.
brothers and sisters not already bonded under the law? Don't they already have that right to be a family in a family household?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Well,
so. So I don't see why this. Yeah, I don't see why this opens the door for any more of that sort of thing than we would now have, except that perhaps it would make it easier for them to form a household and have sort of beneficiary death things. But those kind of things can be done mostly contractually.
Yeah.
So how about marriage contracts where more than two people are involved?
Who's the state to tell anybody what their marriage is? Why should we be locking people up in federal prison because they have more than one wife?
Yeah, that's not the state's
business. I don't think that what is it? Polyamory? No.
Polyamory or polygamy?
Yeah, polygamy, polyamory. Yeah.
Polygamy. That should not be illegal because it's really up to people.
It's voluntary. Yeah, it's consenting.
Well, we find out that
as
in
long
these
as
sort
all
of
parties
polygamous
are consenting
relationship, there's plenty of child abuse.
Well, child abuse is a separate category.
No, because we find out that you've seen these the fundamentalist Mormon cults. They were just child brides, and there's a lot of child abuse in their polygamy.
Well, nobody's talking about legalizing child abuse.
No, but I mean, if we did allow polygamy, then
there's child abuse in heterosexual couple
the
families
state is
too.
The state is partially responsible for them living like that.
I personally know polyamorous couples.
They certainly aren't responsible
who are not involved in religion. They're not involved in anything like that. Like I know. Did I say polyamorous couples? Wow, that's not correct. Polyamorous. I don't. What? Not families, but
relationships.
Relationships. Yes. So I know a few of those situations personally, and they're my age, and they're all happy and dating each other and having happy lives, and I don't understand why we're not allowed to.
Okay, Jackie, is that the majority of relationships you see? Like, are most of the relationships you see polyamory?
I'm polyamorous, but as was pointed out earlier, it's an area where there needs to be more reciprocity. But I love everybody.
But intimately,
that's not
Carlton.
True.
That's polyamory.
I know two different relationships in person that are polyamorous. One of them has 4 people, one of them has 3.
Why are most relationships monogamous, Jackie? In America, in the West, opposed to like Islamic?
Because it's been forced by the church
culture.
Of the state.
I mean, we're not monogamous beings.
If polyamory and polygamy was a winner, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be wondering what the hell's wrong with the monogamous.
Well, then why do men usually have more than one wife throughout their life?
I don't know. I can't afford one wife at a time.
Most men?
One at a time.
That's a good point, Carlton.
I don't know. Personally, I would never be in a polyamorous relationship, but I don't see why it's considered a bad thing by a lot of people.
Well, isn't it what dating is? Polyamorous does not necessarily mean forming a household. It just simply means.
Well, I think
I mean, we're talking about a relationship where there's 3 people and they all love each other.
All at the same time.
And all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all
polylove.
It's not like there's one person having 2 different relationships.
Well, it's because we're too egalitarian. If we were more patriarchal, and women didn't get a vote in this, I think we'd have a lot more men that were polyamorous.
I know some women. I know some women who are part of that too.
Joking aside, I truly think, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but I truly think that it is. I think women would object to that kind of relationship far more frequently than men would.
Mm-hmm. My wife ain't sharing me. I've asked her. I don't know how many times. She just won't do it. So, come on, let's go old school Mormon.
What about the people who wouldn't object to it? I mean, why make it illegal just because some people wouldn't?
Exactly.
I mean, men are more than happy typically to share their wives as long as they get to watch. It's when it's the other way around that it's problematic.
Boy, man.
Carl coming in with the hits.
Can we get a couple of heavy hitters in here?
You know, the relationship that I know of that's 3 people is actually 2 guys and 1 girl. So, I don't know.
No, the point is not to try to figure out what's right for everybody. We don't want Barack Obama or George Bush or Mitt Romney deciding how everybody's marriage. Mitt Romney might actually go for the polygamy, being an ex-Mormon. But anyway,
he's ex-Mormon.
Romney?
He's not ex-Mormon. He's Mormon.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he is Mormon. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. But yeah. So we just there's no reason why we need to delegate that to these people who obviously
Well, okay. Well, let me ask you this.
I don't know what's right for you in your living situation, and I don't want to. I don't want to control you. I just want to be free to have my own living situation, and that's the way.
Let me ask you, Pyong. Aren't marriage contracts and marriage licenses more hassle than they're worth?
Well, what do you mean when you say marriage contract? Are you just kind of
something that's recognized between the states? You know,
what
like
more trouble in the
For
word?
the participants.
No, because despite all this, this kind of stuff that is less important in my mind is the property interests. Like Jeff was saying that earlier, I don't remember exactly what he said, but the basis of marriage licenses and registration was racial or something.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a practical matter, because if that was exclusively racial, then why does it still exist? And beyond that, there's a reason for it, and that is, say I own a parcel of land, and we're back in, I don't know, 1600 or something.
Right.
And the people don't know me, but I have my land license. Well, I guess it'd be in a feudal system, which is probably more like libertarianism. But say that I'm maybe in the 1800s or something, and I own a parcel of land, and I wed someone, and I want to make sure that that parcel of land passes from me to them,
right?
Despite the fact that, or because of, I might not have any kind of what we would think of as probate planning. No will or whatever. So I register that and say, this is my wife. So they're not my blood, but the land will pass to them upon my death. And I think that's really one of the most important aspects from just a practical point of view of marriages.
Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say that a marriage, like if we just had a purely secular kind of marriage contract, the church being entirely different, but just a secular, we bundle up legal arrangements. So a lease, for example, on an apartment is just a bundling of various things pertaining to using somebody else's car or home or whatever, and a marriage contract would be similar. And in a marriage contract, you would say things like, you wouldn't be necessarily just talking about particular pieces of property, but you would be say, in the event of my death, that anything that's not otherwise spelled out, any of my property goes to this other member of my household or members. So it's kind of a bundling. You could have this. You could have packages like this is a standard household agreement, and then you modify it as you see fit, this kind of thing. So
it will be interesting because even though I used the example before of being married in Tennessee, I actually wasn't married in Tennessee. I was married in Colombia, South America. And marriage certificate is from Colombia, South America. I have no U.S. marriage certificate, and yet. So it's sort of an odd thing, when we say that we recognize the state for the purposes of benefits, recognize the marriage certificate. I've never been asked to produce one.
The certificate is more pro forma, but they recognize the status.
Sure.
I misspoke if I said license. I was more talking generally about registration or something like that.
Okay.
So if I technically get married in another country, the United States will recognize it?
From some countries, not necessarily from all.
Well, their territories, maybe.
Well, here's the real weird issue, right? What about in a country that allows same-sex marriage, and you are, as far as that country is concerned, legally married, and typically the U.S. recognizes marriages from that country. Now you come here and you move to Oklahoma. Do they have the option to now not recognize your marriage license?
Very interesting.
Come up, Yog. Lay down the law.
Well, I honestly don't know that one. I'm not sure how. I was just thinking about that. How a foreign marriage license might go. I think but then I also got sidetracked a little bit because I think that in Oklahoma, see what's happened now because the Supreme Court hasn't ruled on it and hasn't given a homogeneous policy for all of the federal circuit courts of appeal. What happens is the appellate court will make a ruling, and that's basically where it stays. So you don't have the Supreme Court declaring. See, when the Supreme Court says no on something, they declare it unconstitutional. So as long as they don't declare it unconstitutional, you have these little, trimming around the edges. You know what I mean? So I'm not exactly sure how that would go down. I think that probably they are allowing at this point same-sex marriage licenses to be issued in Oklahoma.
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting here too is, for example, if I was in a state that refused to recognize same-sex marriage, let's say I was married in a different state, and now I moved to a state where they refuse to recognize this, I would find this very interesting when I file taxes, especially if I'm filing both state and federal taxes, because on my federal tax reform, I would be perfectly within my rights to file as married, okay? And the government wouldn't have any issue with the fact that it was a same-sex marriage. And yet when I file my state tax return, I'm not sure if you could get away then with filing married if the state in fact doesn't recognize your marital status. That would seem to create some very odd financial issues as well.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think that's right. That sounds right to me. That definitely would be an issue.
Sounds like a good reason one of many to oppose taxation.
Yet another.
But
Hi, Lindsay.
But I just wanted to point out, and I touched on this very briefly before, is that the principle that one jurisdiction wouldn't uphold any and all laws or rights that one is given in another jurisdiction is not a bad one. I mentioned, I hate to use invidious examples, but this one's so clear. The North was not until the Fugitive Slave Act, we had the Underground Railroad which led to the Dred Scott decision, and probably others can speak to this more clearly, but the general principle was that if somebody owned a slave in the South and that slave came to the North, we would have to recognize the ownership of that slave in the North, and I guess even undertake to get that slave returned, and the North was not cooperating with the Underground Railroad, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea that a jurisdiction can't, has to accept any and all kind of legal arrangements with other jurisdictions is not something I don't think we would want entirely. It's very reasonable to say, we're not going to enforce any number of things that we don't find to be justifiable.
But if they didn't do that, Jeff, does that mean in terms of marriage? I mean, would that literally mean that you would have to? Right now there's a difference because we're only talking same-sex marriage. But let's say that was across the board, even for heterosexual marriages, that one state didn't have to recognize another. So I mean, you have to get does that mean you have to get remarried in every state? And B, that you move to, and B, if you do, it would be kind of a weird thing because now you've married the same woman more than once. Would that necessitate getting multiple divorces?
Well, I think as a practical matter, states want people to move and they want to interact with other states. In theory, one could be ass backwards that you would have to get a license in our state or whatever, and that would suck. But as a rule, people to have an economy, people have to be able to move in and out of your state, and they have to have basic contractual. Right. But I think things recognized. But theoretically, a state could be backwards enough to not recognize those things.
Here's the problem with one state not recognizing, even when we're talking same-sex marriage. Here's a problem when you start having individual states being able to not recognize that marriage. Think of how absurd it would be in reverse. Imagine a place where when you got a divorce, the adjoining state didn't recognize the fact that you were divorced and still considered you married.
Yeah, I agree. That would suck, you know.
I mean, literally, you get married again, and you'd be a bigamist in 49 out of 50 states.
Right.
So, and I almost think so to sort of be consistent, even though it may not be perfect. I think, if for no other reason, that argument alone should be sufficient to say that states need to recognize each other's marriage certificates. I think it's just as absurd for Oklahoma to say we don't recognize you being married as it would be for Oklahoma to say to a heterosexual couple, we don't recognize the fact that you're not married because you were married in Minnesota, and we don't recognize their marriage certificate or their divorce certificate. That's absurd.
I agree that it's absurd and that it would come as a great cost to them, but I have this just habit of thinking in first principles, and as far as that goes, yeah, there would be a lot wrong with it. If I were a member of that state, I would certainly fight to not have that be the case. But you can carry a gun out to your car and drive across your state, like in New Hampshire or someplace like that. As soon as you get into I know New Jersey is one of the states, or New York actually, you get into New York, it's a felony. Which you did that was perfectly illegal in New Hampshire, and you say that that's terrible. I think it's terrible that it's a felony anywhere, but nonetheless, that's kind of how the states were given this. It was supposed to be dual sovereignty, and unfortunately, every time you bring this up, everyone says, "Oh, you're defending slavery." No, I'm not. I'm just not defending the sovereignty or the. I'm defending the decentralization of power.
But have we lost? I think you could rationally make an argument for decentralization of laws. In the 1700s, in the 1800s, where when we talked about a state, we were actually talking about a relatively tiny, small group of people, relatively speaking. Whereas now, the delineation between, unless you're talking about Montana, the delineation between many states and the Union as a whole is almost, it's not insignificant in absolute numbers, but I think for practical purposes, it's almost non-existent. That there are so many people in most states that you have to treat them in the same way that you would have to treat the United States as a whole, just because of the number of people. Maybe it makes more sense now to talk about centralizing more laws and taking away states' rights, or not. I hate to say taking them away, but I don't think the need is there, and I don't think it's beneficial anymore in a lot of areas to allow states to run their own show.
Well, beneficial according to whom? I would argue that the more complex and the larger a society gets, the even less practical it is to try to centrally command everyone when you have the kind of diversity that we have.
I would look at it the other way, and I would say that back in the 1700s, if I was born if I was here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the odds that I would ever even go to another state, unless it was just literally, if I lived on the border, type of deal, were probably relatively slim. I mean, travel was certainly not as commonplace. And having multiple homes and zipping around the globe, certainly not. And so it seems now that because we have that fluidity in our geography, in terms of where we live, where we work, where we vacation, it almost seems to mandate that we really need to abstract far away from the states farther and come up with a more either nationalized or globalized set of set of guidelines to say, this is the world we live in. We live in a world where we are constantly in flux from one state or one country to another. We should make the laws so that they accommodate that time of life.
I agree 100%, Carlton. We should have a one world religion and a mark on your right hand that lets you do.
Oh boy! But what you're talking about, Carlton, that's the role of treaties. If you sign treaties, there's a European Union which has a lot of evil aspects to it, but for the most part, in terms of the free trade and among people, these kind of things, the ease with which one can cross borders and all that. That's the role. That's really the role of treaties. And if you're the freer and nicer your state is, the more eager people would be to want to sign treaties with you. We have treaties with Mexico and Canada that really aren't that good. They're supposed to be free trade treaties, but it kind of works the same way. Where you.
All right, let me ask you this, Jeff. To your knowledge, what is the world's largest superpower that's decentralized?
My wife.
Switching topic.
What's the world's largest superpower that's decentralized?
It's decentralized economics.
Yeah, it has no central. Well, either way, yeah. How about economics? Tell me decentralized economics. They're a superpower and they have no central.
Damn.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was.
What was that?
Yeah, there was a server error.
Google hiccup.
Right, and I think we're still live though.
Hello.
I think yeah, we're
That
still
was
live.
awesome.
We were talking about a forbidden subject.
We just got decentralized.
We got decentralized.
Silent Keller.
Even
Silent
Plainfield.
Keller.
Did somebody say Obama?
Thanks, Obama.
Oh, God.
Oh, did it happen again? Okay, Jeff comes back.
Well, I think what happens is once you see the server crash, some people have a tendency to go ahead and reload and stuff, so it takes them a little longer. I find that if you just stay put, it just comes back on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least on my end here, it does.
Well, I wonder what happens on the YouTube
live.
playback. Does it just have a skip or
The
the live
YouTube-
show?
No, the YouTube is the live feed is still going. Still going. As long as I guess, good thing I didn't reload it. It might have stopped if I reloaded. So
Yeah.
I just stayed put now since I'm broadcasting from my end. So by the way, again, welcome back, viewers. We're talking about gay marriage and recognition by the states and internationally recognition of
Globalism.
and as well as regular marriage. So welcome back to Breakfast with Bunto and Brother John. Hey, Bunto, we're going to do this regularly every Thursday. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay,
I
well,
want to switch topics if nobody minds.
Thursday's my day off. Awesome, John.
excellent.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Giorgio.
Oh, yeah, before I switch topics, yeah, I mean, Roy, you just came to the room. I don't know if you want to give any thoughts on the topic at hand before we switch.
I was going to say something funny. I guess I can go ahead and say it.
Please.
Genesis 2:25. That's as funny as it gets.
Oh, on
Okay.
the marriage thing? Yeah.
It doesn't come to mind, but
Yeah, well, let me read it for you real quick, okay? And they were both naked, the man and his wife. You're talking about marriage.
right.
There you go. That's it.
There you go.
Reproduction.
It's settled. The issue is settled.
Yeah. If you're naked together, you're married. Okay.
Wow. Really? I mean,
Okay, do I want to go there? Do I want to
no.
go?
Even a baseball team.
And the rest of the
is
verse
married.
Baseball team.
and they're not ashamed. Okay? They're not ashamed of their naked.
Hey, you know, how far we want to go with it? What do we want to talk about?
Naked people. Okay.
No, something came up. Well, me and we're not going to get into specifics of names, but something came up, and it came up before I recognized it. You know, when people say to you, you know, maybe you said something offensive, and they hurt your feelings, right? And
Right.
people say, you know, you made me feel this way, and they demand an apology. How responsible are we for other people's quote unquote feelings? You know, shouldn't everybody be responsible for their own feelings and how they react to something? What, you know?
Isn't it actionable, Pyong? I mean, I could get sued for not
Sued for
coughing up
what?
the apology. They
What?
demand an apology, and I don't offer it. I'm getting sued.
Not to mind. I don't know.
No, really, is that a possible tendency to
I
get
mean,
an
if
apology?
somebody, honestly, I mean, if somebody, how difficult is it to apologize? If somebody comes up to me, unless we're in like a knockdown drag out,
Right.
you know, where they're trying to tell me some ridiculous bullshit. I mean, even if they're wrong and I'm right, how difficult is it to apologize? I'll give them the apology and let's keep going.
But isn't an
I
apology
think
an admittance
that-
of guilt?
No.
It's my right to be offended. It's your right to offend me. That's it. It doesn't say in the Constitution.
I think
I'm not offended.
I think the hardest part in all of this is forgiveness. I think the hardest part is if your feelings are hurt or something like that, even if someone doesn't apologize, the hardest part is forgiveness, in my opinion. And I think we need to do better in forgiving those who hurt us. So.
Yeah, see, I don't know about forgiveness. I mean, I'm willing to move on from situations. I'm not really exactly sure about the forgiveness thing. I mean, I will not. You know, if somebody does something wrong to me, like they steal from me,
Right.
I might say, okay, we can go on to a certain extent, but I'm not sure about what constitutes the forgiveness there, because I will always remember that. You know what I mean? And people make this.
I think there's a distinction between forgiveness and forgetting.
Right.
If someone did wrong to me, I would forgive them, but I will never forget, and I will likely not trust that person any longer.
Well,
It's really hard for me to trust people, but forgiving someone is letting go of trying to get any sort of, apology or whatnot, or interacting with them further. It's like, okay, they did this to me, I've accepted it, I've forgiven them, but I'm not going to interact with them. I'm not going to forget what they did.
Okay, wait, hold on, Jackie. I think Jackie, we're getting off like a little bit of the subject. Like, say, someone asks you, okay, the typical, the wife asks you, well, how do I look in this dress, and she wants your complete honesty, and you tell her, no,
you look fantastic.
It doesn't really compliment you, right? Well, I'm sorry. And then she goes, she's hurt, and you're like, you made me feel hurt, Well, first of all, you asked for my opinion, all right? Now, again, am I responsible for how she reacts? I mean, that's a very intimate situation, but here on Hangouts and stuff, it's not so intimate, and people's feelings are hurt. But, I mean, should you apologize for telling what you feel is the truth or your perspective?
Should you apologize for telling the truth?
Can you all hear me? Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah.
You should be careful not to insult
Broth.
somebody.
Yeah,
I mean, in that specific scenario, maybe you can say something like, I'm sorry you're hurt by this, but that color doesn't really suit you. How about we a different color, or make a different suggestion, a different dress for the night. I don't know. There are other ways to approach that specific situation, but I know what you're referring to in the big picture, and no, you don't need to apologize ultimately for telling, specifically for telling the truth.
Well, how about this? Lyrics, are you there?
For that, you don't need to apologize.
Lyrics.
Okay, Jeff, which is worse, white knighting or apologizing profusely?
What is white knight?
Could you give a white knight apology?
What is white knight?
Okay. What's white knighting, Jeff?
I have no idea. White knighting is something that I guess males are generally accused of doing, where they come by and they rescue a woman unsolicited rescue from a conversation or being ganged up upon.
Unwanted.
It's
Yeah.
unwanted, sort of. It's kind of a male protective instinct often. So sometimes it happens, and it makes women actually, rather than make them feel good and
Okay.
protected, makes them feel diminished and weakened by the effort. Usually.
For example, I'm going to hang out with Fiction Fighter, right? And she's just tearing into theists left and right, and then after each time I say I apologize in her behalf. I'm like mixing white knighting with apologizing at the same stroke.
Yeah, apologizing on somebody else's behalf is certainly not something that you're
I apologize for
not
everything.
normally empowered to do.
Where'd you go to White Knight School?
That might not be advice to be apologizing to someone else, especially your mate, and why the hell did you apologize for me? I meant what I said.
I apologize, Fiction.
So I just like to, as far as generally speaking, when as a rule, when I have heard that I've hurt somebody's feelings, I do feel bad about it. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I have a desire to express that if that's the case. Sometimes, however, if somebody challenges you about a religious question or something in libertarianism, and I start giving what I think is a pretty, objective kind of version of my thoughts, and that offends somebody or whatever, or they say, "Oh, that's so offensive," then I kind of say, well, then this probably isn't the best conversation to be having. This is, we should be talking about sports or weather or something like that, because we're talking about really core issues, and if you're easily offended, we're not going to have a productive conversation. So I'm sorry if I offended you, but I mean, if you're not up for talking about this, that's.
Jeff, under liberty, wouldn't you say that you would also, under in a libertarian point of view, you would really work it, or not work it, but you would be aware of what you're saying to not offend somebody. You want somebody happy. Nobody wants somebody to be unhappy. That you're gonna phrase it. You'll be able to present it. In a way that you know what I'm saying, that we would want to be aware of how we put things sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think as a practical matter, sure, when you're trying to convince somebody, you want to put your best foot forward, and if people, we are human beings, and we do respond to sort of those nonverbal or verbal signals that can turn people off. So yeah, as a practical matter, so but that aside, even as a human being, if I said something that offended you, maybe I didn't know something about your family situation, or I used an example that hit too close to home, or any number of things that can hurt somebody's feelings. Or maybe I was just careless. Maybe I did know that and I forgot, and whatever.
Right. That's really offensive.
At that point, I will say, and I do think it's really important in communication, whenever somebody gets upset or something, that you immediately deal with it, because the worst thing you can do is just keep on with your talking points, keep talking about the minimum wage when somebody's, all up into a lather. That's not going to get you anywhere. So, sometimes even when I've talked to people, I say, I can tell that this issue evokes a very strong emotional response in you. Can you tell me why that is? And then you'll hear really interesting things from people, and you're also engaging those people and treating them not, like a human being, rather than just a soundboard for you to bounce things off of. So yeah, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't like it when my feelings get hurt, even though they don't get hurt that often when we're talking about this stuff. So I don't take it personally. But
you haven't talked to me very much, Joe.
That's true. I'll reserve judgment.
That's a great photo you got there, Raw. Who took that?
That would be my promotion manager. Me.
Oh, yeah, that's a great photo. Like it.
I didn't know it was a photo. I just didn't think you moved much when you talked.
Yeah, I don't move. That's right.
I thought you had one of those little veins in your forehead that moves when you talk, like on Star Trek, those aliens. No, it isn't.
I wanted to say, Jeff, I appreciate your guitar playing, man. So.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know Jeff played guitar.
I meant lyrics.
I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
either.
I'm sorry. Jeff, you play guitar?
I'm not offended by that, but
you
I've been called worse things than a guitar player.
I get offended constantly in these things, dude. You know, like I hear certain key phrases and personalities that I don't like, and I have to use my big boy, my adultness here, and for the most part, just say, you know, if it don't apply, let it fly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that phrase.
So we kind of exhausted this subject about having to apologize, right, for telling the truth, right?
Well, I tell you, Brojo, in that particular example, what I would do is I'd go to the dollar store and I'd pick up like a purple sweatshirt with Minnie Mouse on it and some brown shoes and some green pants. Your wife will never again ask you for fashion advice. I think when you apologize, though, it's perspective. You know, I agree with a lot of what Jeff said. Apologizing is saying, okay, you know, I recognize I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry about that. We can move forward and we can go on and we can let the past be the past. I also agree, though, with what Jeff said, and I do this myself, probably too much maybe, is that if you feel like you shouldn't apologize or that you're in the right, you have every right to, you know, end that connection with that person. Right. And if you find that the person is just being offended, and you don't think they really have a right to be offended by the things, and maybe they're doing some kind of passive aggressive nonsense,
it can be
let them go.
It can be a debate tactic, yeah. It could be, oh, that is so offensive. Well, that's not an argument, and then I think it's perfect. You know, I feel like you asked me about this topic, or we've been talking about this topic, and I haven't been trying to push anybody's buttons emotionally. I've been as objective in my responses as I can, so I don't feel like I gave you cause necessarily to be offended in this, but if you feel otherwise, let me know, and maybe I'm mistaken. But
well, I notice a lot of people when we bring up libertarianism that people get offended, you know, and I've seen that a lot with you, Jeff, and I don't necessarily, I agree with some aspects of it, and I don't, but I don't let those feelings get in the way of an adult conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly, in my view anyway, when you're talking about important ideas and really fundamental radical ideas, like libertarian is, like atheism is, like theism is, that it's perfectly justified for those conversations to be passionate. And you know, when you talk about atheism, to most people had religious parents, and if you're talking about atheism to people who's all the people in their life that means something to them preached theism, and all your childhood memories are about it, it's not going to be just an intellectual exchange. You're really chipping away at a lot of, you know, their upbringing, and not deliberately, but, you know, if somebody had an influential teacher, they had positive experiences in church, this kind of rocks their world to think that all of these people may have misled them, if that's the case. So it's perfectly, it's part of the, you know, if you're not talking about stuff, if you're not ruffling feathers, you're just not being, you're just not ready to have those kind of conversations if it does hit an emotional chord. And I know my own experience, when I've had an emotional response to an idea, I've stepped back and tried to do this as much as possible and say, you know, really, why is this hitting me emotionally? Is it something that I really haven't worked out as much as I think I have, or something like that? Or was the person being rude? So you know, it's part of being adult is putting, you know, taking yourself out, you know, out of the moment and thinking about these things objectively. So
thanks, Jeff. For the viewers out there, I do have the Q&A open if you want to ask a question, or if you want to join, the link is in the event page. If you want to join us, we're about halfway through the broadcast. I try not to keep these things live for more than 2 hours, but we'll continue off air if so. But Fiction Fighter, thanks for listening in. Bunto had to leave for now. I don't know if he'll be back. Yeah. So if you have a question, Q&A, link is in the event page if you want to join us. So yeah, I have I guess switch topics unless someone else had something else to say about what we were talking about.
I think we were talking about apologizing, offending.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't have anything on this. I'm sorry.
I noticed a lot of people left, so we must have offended.
They must get offended. But I just came across this article, so I don't know how much I have to say about it. But links in the side. New York Times today reported that Walmart is going to be raising their wages to $9 an hour for about 40% of their workforce starting in April. Don't know if this is from just a lot of the pressure and protests going on. I don't know if something to talk about. What do you think the effects might be?
Yeah, I saw that too, and it didn't say it was going to be up to $10 by the end of 2015.
Well, you know they're going to take this off the top end. I mean, the consumer is going to have to take the hit. That's how it works out.
No, the consumer would only take the hit if the only price pressure were labor, but they've got competition. So the only price pressure is not labor, and there is a fat margin at the top where the shareholders live, where that money can be taken from. So what will happen is the Waltons, I think, aren't the Waltons like 5 of the top 10 wealthiest people in the United States? So that's where I think the money will be hit. Or be coming from. However, you know, that's a popular conception, though. As a matter of fact, did you guys see the video of Peter Schiff in the Walmart parking lot?
Yeah, that's classic.
Jesus, Pete, come on, you moron.
Oh, come on! I thought he made an excellent point.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about for you guys who haven't seen it.
Moron, by the way, did you just offend? You just offended me.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Say you're sorry.
I'm really hurt. I can't go on. I'm inconsolable.
So Peter Schiff is one of Jeff's heroes. He's a libertarian economist, kind of. He's funny though because he
awesome.
talks about the weakness of the dollar, and he makes a lot of his money betting against the dollar in currency markets outside of the United States.
he protects a lot of investors against the predations.
Oh, yeah. Well, whatever. Anyway,
so
he's right. He's a fellow. He's an investor. He's a financial guy, and he was actually, I think, Ron Paul's economic advisor during the 2008 campaign election, the election campaign.
Yeah, he and a couple of other people.
Yeah, so he's big time into this libertarian stuff, and he goes into a Walmart, and people were saying raise the minimum wage, and Peter Schiff is like, he's a doom and gloom guy, okay, and so he goes in, he's always saying this is going to fail and that's going to mess up, and sometimes he's right, you know, but he goes
was very right about the housing crash.
Hold on. So he goes into the Walmart parking lot and he's saying to people, hey, you know, the people in here, they're not making a lot of money. Do you think that they should be paid more? And now he's in a suit, he's got a camera crew with him, and he's got another person that's holding a box, you know, like a donation box, a big square donation box. And he says, okay, well, if you don't, and he says to the people in a parking lot, do you think they ought to be paid more? And the people are like, yeah, they should be paid more. He's like, okay, well, give us some money, we'll put it in the box for you, and then we'll go give it to them.
I don't even, he didn't actually even ask him, I'm sorry, did he actually ask him that question? I think he just said he was collecting for.
Yeah, he asked him. He said, "They're not making them. Do you think they should be paid more?" And they said, "Yeah, whatever." He said, "Okay, we'll put the money in the box. We'll go give it to him." And he videotaped this, and the people said, "No, I'm not putting any money in the box." And he's like, "See, that's proof positive that people don't want to pay more money for their products, and therefore the people in Walmart apparently, I mean, that's the implication, shouldn't get a cost of a wage raise." Well, that is preposterous to me. I mean, I lost almost all respect for the guy at that point. I mean, yeah, he can make money. He makes a lot of people money. But when he's going in there and he is saying that if you increase the employees' wages, that prices will absolutely go up, that's ignoring competition.
He also did that in a very affluent area around here, and I know that the average person you would encounter in those areas at those Walmarts would be more than capable of chipping in a few bucks to help out the employees.
Not the point. Not the point. Absolutely not the point. The point is that what Peter Schiff did was he portrayed it as if you give the Walmart employees more money, that prices will go up in Walmart. That is not true. Because Walmart's prices, they have good price leaders in some cases, but if you look at their prices, they're not really much cheaper than a lot of other places. They've got good price leaders, like they'll have they might buy in bulk and get a bunch of 40-inch TVs and put them up for $250 or something. Yeah. But then the other stuff is competitively priced. So if you're telling me that because Walmart, we're the victim Walmart, we have to pay our people more, and so that means we're going to raise our prices such that they're higher than if you went to whatever the competitor is in your area, Costco or whatever the competitor would be. That would be absurd. They wouldn't do that because they would lose business. You see what I'm saying? And that's the point. And Peter Schiff made it seem like, now, if we do this, then Walmart's going to raise their prices, and all human beings will suffer.
Young, what about a situation you have in Washington State? I think it was Seattle specifically, right? They raised the minimum wage to $15. Now, what if they did that, $15 now? You're talking from 7-something. They make minimum $15. You don't think that would not increase prices of the product?
There's no question that if you have unbounded increases in wages, okay? And now, mind you, I'm not necessarily even advocating for a higher wage. I'm saying that Peter Schiff was intellectually dishonest in the model that he put forth. But there is definitely some place, if you have increase without bounds, where you're going to have a negative effect on employment. Obviously, if you mandate legally that a bartender must make $50,000 a year, you're definitely going to have fewer bartenders. But where that line is is another matter. So that's not my area. I'm not even really advocating for that. I'm just saying that the Peter Schiff thing was a bunch of bullshit, and it's proved out. It's proven because Walmart is voluntarily, from whatever pressures they received, raising it to 9 and then into 10 for some of their employees. So good for Walmart. Good. I think that's a proper decision.
Okay, I think the other gentleman. I'm sorry, is it Lyrics? Yeah, you had your hand up. So if I could.
I just want to give my opinion on Peter Schiff and.
Oh boy.
Peter Schiff has been on YouTube since it started selling his gold. Right? That's what he is. He's an investor. He's a gold seller. He will say whatever he needs to do to boost his profits. And he will do whatever kind of marketing campaign that he needs. He's a very good marketer. That's what makes him so popular, is he's likable.
What's that different from any other business owner?
Yeah, why is it different for you?
You don't at all wrong with it. Hold on. There's nothing at all wrong with
your income.
There's nothing wrong with being a good marketer, but the things that he says are not true. He puts you in a state like a state of emotional distress about all these. If you watch his videos, he's one of those doom and gloom guys, and he sells precious metals. Okay, put 2 and 2 together. Doom and gloom, fear about the economy. Here's an out for you that I give you. All you got to do is give me $1,200, $1,300 for an ounce of gold.
I understand that, Lyrics. I understand that, and though I do like Peter Schiff, I am like a lot of his predictions are totally off, and I understand where you're coming from. But you guys do also understand that most purchases are usually emotionally charged, and it's just a tool of marketing.
I don't see him as an economic.
Can we stick with the original topic a little bit longer? people have talked a long time and we're getting on a tangent. But I
I'm
just
sorry.
wanted
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend.
if the Walmart first of all, if the Walmart raises in wages are market driven, then Yahoo, that's great. I want to see people make more money, whether they're low income or if they're producing value, if they're productive. I want to see them do as well as they possibly can. If it's actually driven by forces that are extra market or just based on bad economic knowledge or pressures like that, then it could actually be very destructive for the people who everybody claims to be wanting to help. In the same way, the people in the parking lot want to help as long as there's no personal cost to them. So anyway, as far as
so this is good.
So what if what if everything else stays the same and Walmart raises its wages? Where does that come from? Well, maybe you're probably correct. They can't really raise their prices.
Profitability.
They can't really raise their prices without affecting others. So another thing they can do is they can have fewer workers. You can have fewer workers working more hours, perhaps. You can have automatic checkouts, more automated cashiers than are now there. You can have fewer people to, when you're wandering around the store and trying to figure out where somebody is, you'll have fewer people to help you out. So none of this stuff happens.
Why would you ignore the obvious place where the money can come from, and that is profits?
Because profits are reinvested back in a business.
Oh, so they're sacrosanct, right? These people have to make the maximum amount of money that they want to make. That is right, right, Jeff?
Yeah, everybody who's involved in the enterprise wants the maximum they can make.
No, not once. I'm talking about you're ignoring the fact that they can just take profitability, money that they actually earn. Okay,
right.
And this is gonna sound a little bit socialist, but on the backs of the worker. So you're saying no. Instead of that, we'll just have fewer workers. So the customer will suffer because there'll be fewer services and all this bullshit. Dude, it doesn't need to be that way. The Waltons are some of the richest people in the United States, Jeff.
It doesn't matter. They shouldn't have to pay any more for labor than anyone else does.
Okay, but you understand this is a voluntary decision that they're reaching.
They're not wealthy and successful because they pay too much for things.
Do you think that everyone who is wealthy and successful is meritorious?
No, I don't. A lot of them are parasites. A lot of them have protections from the government. So they could be wealthy and
successful because they're parasites then?
Well, if you can demonstrate that.
That's what you said.
I didn't say that. You said
it. No, that's the answer you just gave.
No,
I asked you if everyone was successful.
I'm sorry. Hold on. You asked me if everybody who was a millionaire or rich was meritorious, and I said no, not everybody.
Right. Exactly.
I didn't say not anybody.
Yeah, I know, Jeff.
Well, so why did you say I said that about Sam Walton? What's your
I
deal?
didn't say you said that about Sam Walton.
Yes,
I said it's
did.
possible. No, goddamn.
Well,
I didn't even mention Sam Walton.
It's not
Sam
like
he doesn't own anything.
No, it's if you're Halliburton, if you're
Jeff, you got to figure this out,
you're
bro.
filibustering.
Jeff, you got to figure this stuff out. Okay, you're sitting here saying that it's all gloom and doom. They pay him more. Oh, you're going to have fewer people working. It's gonna hurt people.
Okay.
It's not going to hurt people, Jeff.
You're just misquoting me and then talking.
I'm not. How am I misquoting you, Jeff?
You already did. That's fine.
Watch it again, Jeff.
No,
it was painful enough the first time.
Watch it again, Jeff. I tell you what, you cite where I talked about Sam Walton at all, and I will send you a check.
Pyong, man, I can't have to mute you. You're out of control.
Can I give a couple of suggestions?
Go ahead, Lucifer. Welcome.
I was about to say, instead of... it sounded like they're picking on Walmart specifically somewhere, but how about you link minimum wage to the company's profits? So that way, if they try to do anything weird, the minimum wage just keeps on going up until they do it the right way. And then the second thing you could do is you can go from there, raise their taxes, base their taxes off their profits, and then lower their taxes based off how many people they hire. And that way, as their taxes lower, it's made up for the government by the income tax of the people being hired.
Well, if you want Walmart to basically go out of business and not be there to hire anybody, that would be an excellent idea.
This is the thing. They can literally get zero taxes if they hired enough people. And it won't rob the government of any money because people will be paying more income taxes. And all Walmart has to do is do what it does best.
Walmart is not a jobs.
expand.
Walmart is not a jobs program. Walmart is a business that sells merchandise to other people. They don't hire
But
people.
see, here's the problem. This isn't like the idea that people are individuals and they get to do all this stuff. It's a myth. You're not an individual. You're only an individual inside your head. You're involved with everyone.
All right.
Being an individual does not mean that you can't interact with other people or that it is not worthwhile to do so.
The way the system is set up, it's not that the people are there to make a few rich. It's that the few rich are there to give the people jobs to work. So if they're doing something opposite of that, they should be punished for it because they're hurting everyone.
Full disclosure: is anyone in here a shareholder in Walmart Corporation?
Not I.
I am.
People who work at Walmart do so voluntarily. They agree to work for whatever wages that Walmart offers, and the problem is that at least for the people at the margins, if you raise the minimum wage and the productivity of those particular people isn't above that particular arbitrarily set wage, then you're either expecting Walmart to be charitable and keep them on, or you're most likely dooming them to be unemployed, and that's not helping out anybody.
Based on what model, Jeff? You know, one of the reasons that I think a lot of what you say is absolutely absurd is because you don't understand that economics models existing systems. What you think it does is that they come up with new mechanisms to apply to things. That's not how it works.
So you don't think when the price of something goes up, it affects people's behavior?
Now, who's misquoting who now? Are you kidding me?
I'm
Did I just say that? Did I say that?
No, well, I said that has been the point of my argument. Has been that when the price of something goes up, it affects how much of it people will buy. Supply and demand is a very basic. So you're asking where do I get these economic ideas from La La Land? No, this is basic supply and demand, and it applies to labor too.
I don't think you're ever going to get it.
If you think it's
I really don't think you're ever going to get it.
I'm not going to maybe get where you are, wherever that might be.
No, I mean, we're talking. If we're talking about economics,
I do get
about the fact that it's modeling. It's not. You don't establish some kind of bizarre libertarian ideal system.
Supply and demand.
Implement that. You just don't do it.
Supply and demand is a bizarre libertarian system.
I didn't. And who's misquoting who now?
I'm not. I wasn't quoting you.
You're just putting words in my mouth. I'm sorry.
I characterized what I said that you said was absurd. I didn't quote you.
Yeah, I'm saying that the implementation of most of the ideas that you seem to abide by, absurd. And I think that it's absurd, and you continue to do it because you really don't understand economics. I'm sorry.
Well, if the ideas are not absurd, why is implementing them absurd?
Look at reality, Jeff. You're talking about a situation where if Walmart raises their wage,
right,
all this shit's going to happen and everything's going to collapse.
I didn't say that.
Because you are reciting a dogma. The reality is Walmart raised their wages.
Right. Well, we don't know in the long run if that's going to end up hurting people or not. And
what we would have to do is model it in the future. Not apply some kind of idealistic dogma and say, oh, this is doom and gloom, this is really going to come out bad.
Well,
that's the difference.
May I ask you something? Maybe this is the free market at work. See, listen, you have Walmart under a lot of public pressure. They're getting a lot of bad public image, and this might be a way for them to save face. They're looking at long-term profitability and staying in business. Perhaps this is a way. Listen, let's raise the wage a little bit, improve our public image. Maybe that will invite people more to apply at Walmart's, and so maybe this is the free market at work. the other thing also, maybe this issue of wage increase maybe has to do with a lot of turnaround in their employees as well, and they want to keep dedicated employees there.
Yeah, that very well may be.
It could very well be, in which case it's laudable. I said that from the beginning, but if businesses will adapt.
All right.
Business, I said if this is market driven, it's laudable. I don't know if you were listening, but I did say that at the outset. Businesses adapt to any number of situations, but one of the things about economics, studying economics, that I think separates people who think economically and don't, is that you can always see something. It's really easy to like give somebody a raise or whatever, and you see this person and they got a raise and they're really happy. But what you don't see are the people that don't get hired. And that's what you see evidence of that. You see the automatic cash registers in Home Depot. Most of the checkouts in the Home Depots around here are automatic checkout because they don't need health insurance. Automatic cash registers don't need health insurance. They don't go on strike. They don't come in late. They work all the time, and people are mildly inconvenienced for them. And they weren't economically viable until the wages got to be a certain point where they were actually, it was more efficient to automate than not. And that happened with gas stations. That's why you pump your own gas now. When I was a kid, there was an army of people that ran out to your car and wiped your windows. Those jobs are all gone, and nobody can get those jobs.
Actually, in Jersey, it's illegal to pump your own gas.
Well, I know that about Jersey and Oregon too, but yeah. And that's not something I'm for either. But it wasn't illegal or legal around here. It's never been required that there was full service. But the idea that my mom would have to pump her gas in the olden days, that was just unheard of. Somebody came out and pumped your gas and cleaned your windows and checked your oil and all of those things. And these jobs, they go away. But they didn't go away overnight. And that's Walmart's not going to fire people en masse on Monday morning, but over time it will become more profitable. People who are out there selling electronic checkout things will say, we can save your company X, Y, and Z if you automate this many workstations, or if we have robots showing people where stuff is, and who knows what will become more viable.
Hey, Jeff, you're right. You're absolutely right. I've brought this topic up before, and robotics is going to wipe out a lot of jobs. And then what?
Possibly. Well, we're making it, if that's your fear, raising the minimum wage is certainly will get us there a lot quicker. I tend to not think that I don't have a real doom and gloom idea about that. That's been said about every kind of manufacturing process since the assembly line.
This is why we're going more towards more of a service-oriented economy. Because that's one thing that you ain't gonna be able to replace with a robot is human interaction. You go to a restaurant, you want to be served by a waiter. You go to a bar, you want to be served by a bartender. These kind of jobs I can't see being replaced, but I see that more and more we're getting more of a our economy is based on service, jobs of service. Definitely much more so than product.
Yeah. That's the problem with that. I don't really think there's enough of those jobs. I don't think you can have enough of those jobs when everything else is gone.
Well, we want robots to do things that people just don't want to do. So if people don't want to manually, we could have full employment if we outlawed digging equipment and anything like that, and we told people they had to just dig holes with their bare hands. We could have full employment. But there's a lot of things that we don't want to do. We want to have a shorter workday. We want to have leisure time, and we don't want to spend all of our time doing unnecessary, dangerous, backbreaking labor. So
being a police officer is dangerous work. What about them? What if all of a sudden RoboCop becomes a reality? How would you feel about that?
I don't know if they could be much worse actually than the current state of affairs. But
I don't think you guys
are. What do you do with all those people, Jeff? What do you do with all those people thrown to the wayside? Put them on welfare?
No, I mean you have to find a way to be productive. I'm trying to help these.
Find a way
people.
to be productive.
I want these folks to be competitive with robots and technology, and they're not if you keep pricing them out of the job market.
300 million people in America, all right? And if all Walmart turns into fucking robots, people are going to die.
I personally like going like in Walmart or Home Depot, I personally like going. I hate the idea of these automatic self checkouts
Yeah.
because I think one, it does take away jobs, but
Yeah.
two, it should be, or a business should keep in mind that it's part of the shopping experience. Going to the cashier, having a few choice words or whatever, hi, goodbye, have a nice day. I think that it adds to the experience, and if a person has a good experience at a place that they either eat or shop, they'll go there more often and may even be willing to pay more just for the experience itself.
Well, they do maintain, at least there usually are two or three people who are actually working, still doing, personalized checkout. But the problem is this chips away. It makes labor harder to have, and a lot of people don't. Younger people, I don't really mind them. I've used them a couple times. I'd rather have a person ring stuff up, and there actually is one person who checks your bag and whatever, and who's very nice to you and all of this kind of stuff. But if you really want if you really want people at all segments of the economy to be employed, then you want them to be competitive. And incidentally, unions are the biggest. Everybody thinks it's just the people who want higher. The unions are very big advocates of minimum wage because they don't want to have to compete with people who are willing to work for less than they are.
Are you serious, Jeff?
That's
Do you know
yes.
people that work in unions?
No, but if you look at well, yes, I do.
They
but
don't want minimum wage, man.
Oh
I've
no!
never
If you
seen a
no,
union worker on minimum wage.
no.
Come on,
But
man.
no, you're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is that the unions want to narrow the gap between the unskilled worker. Well, you're just shaking your head. But if you look at who supports minimum wage laws, you'll see that the major unions are very much behind it. Because unions don't want to compete with
class above
right.
the minimum wage people. Come on, dude.
Well,
average union electrician makes $35 an hour, dude. All right, if you're not part of the union and you're an electrician,
well, not everybody's a union electrician, but well, right, and they have protective monopolies of the electrician license and all that.
Yeah, they don't support minimum wage.
I don't know. You draw whatever conclusions you want, but the unions are the big supporters of minimum wage. They support it every time, and the most logical explanation is they want competition with low skilled labor to be as low as possible, and that hurts low skilled wage earners because we can't all start in the same place on the economic ladder. But once you get your foot in the door, you learn some good work habits. Nobody's wage stays the same. I started out at minimum wage. I don't make minimum wage now. I make a lot more than that. So anyway.
Do you think like income caps on unions are good?
No.
I have a lot of experience working with union people, Jeff, and for the most part, I see them as thinking that they are better than everyone else because they're part of a union, and all the people that aren't in the union get paid a lot less, and they like that, and that's not a good thing, dude. Right,
unions restrict. They restrict entry. I'm for voluntary unions. The current situation where a union, if you have a union in a private system where it's voluntary, the unions can strike or do whatever. But under the current system, the employer can't replace them if they go on strike, and if they are asking for more than the market rates. So I have nothing against unions, and I don't think they should have any greater rights than anybody else involved in the transaction. If you have union employees and they want more money than you think they're worth, you should be able to hire the people who are not asking for so much and who are willing to work.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the free system, surely these people are allowed to. I don't really know what the word for it, campaign for what they want, and then get what they want, and organize as they want, and draw their power together to get what they want.
Yeah,
Well,
they used to be called guilds.
A lot of their power because of the union dues, which, I mean, that's one thing I hate. I was part of a union, and part of my dues went to a political party that I was just, opposed to, which, kind of irked me. But, I mean, where they get their political pull, from the union dues, and then they lobby, lobby campaigns and politicians and stuff, whatever.
The idea of a union is a good thing, but the implicate whatever. How it branches out in reality is that it's like a separate workforce that are favored above of the common man, and if you aren't part of it, then you're gonna make like half or a quarter of what the average union worker makes, and it's I do agree in unions, but I would think on a more broad a broad level they're very inclusive, Jeff. And if you can't get in, if you don't know anyone in a union, it's very, very hard to get in one.
Oh, I'm not defending the current union practices at all. Fortunately, we have fewer of them than we used to, but they are in cahoots with the state, and they end up becoming monopolies. So, it's not a good thing. It's not part of the market to the extent that they have these special privileges. But I'm for I think everybody has the right to organize, and they used to call them brotherhoods. That you stick together, negotiate collectively, and in cases where a large number of people are being paid less than the market rate, then they can many times successfully change that. But
do you know why Walmart doesn't allow unions? It's illegal for people. It says in their contract that employers of Walmart cannot form a union.
Aren't some of the Canadian Walmarts union? I could be wrong.
I don't know.
About that.
Here in U.S., there is no union for Walmart, and if there was, then all shit would break loose.
I don't think it's I don't know that that's true.
Walmart would go down the toilet because then they would actually have to pay their workers a livable wage.
Well, they would have to pay too much for their workers, and yes, that would be.
But do you see how Walmart? It says in their contract that you cannot form a union. They are telling you that if you work here, you have to go by our rules. Which I understand the employer contract that they have, but it seems a little squirrely to me that Walmart wouldn't allow unions because, and then there's this big.
Why would they want to have unions?
Because all right, so Walmart's a huge workforce. We're not talking about 20,000 guys in electrical.
The largest private company in the U.S. Yeah.
Yes, we're talking a large amount of people.
Yeah.
So
if these people got together and actually they formed a union and went on strike, Walmart would be fucked. They would have to do it. They would have to pay these people $15 an hour. And
that's exactly why they don't want to have, one of the reasons.
Well, if they were forced to hire those people,
they have every right to do so as well. They have every right to not want to have a union. And if an employee can't agree with that contract, upon employment, then don't work for them.
I know, but most people are forced into those jobs because there's not really anything else.
Nobody's forced to work at Walmart.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff, don't work and then try eating.
Well, yeah, I think you're changing the subject.
I mean,
that is the exact subject, Jeff. You keep on saying it's voluntary. It's like, okay, Jeff, pick it, cake or death.
Okay.
What do you say to the 18-year-old black kid that lives in the ghetto that's got nothing and he needs
that may be his best
work?
choice, but that doesn't mean he can't choose to not work there.
And it's not his only choice.
Yeah, it's not his only choice.
Well, I'm just saying that it is a very viable option. All right. I mean, he could go work at Walmart. He could go work at somewhere else. It doesn't matter.
McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's.
Does McDonald's have unions? Okay. Does Burger King have unions? No. These types of jobs don't, and it's on purpose because they want to keep the people poor.
McDonald's has an automatic burger maker that they're working on, no doubt in anticipation of
robots.
Where does the employee and the employer?
Well, then,
more power here?
If the 18-year-old black guy from the ghetto wants to work for a union, he can, there are public trade schools he can go to that are paid for by the state. He can learn a skill, take the test for the civil jobs in the state or city to get into those union jobs. He can do those things.
I guess, yeah, but
unfortunately, there's a lot of barriers to entry. But a lot of people used to do things like drive a taxi cab, but now you have to have your own taxi cab business, you have to get in some areas a medallion. You have to get a really expensive license to do it. There's all kinds of barriers of entry that are state imposed that could be reduced if you want to really help poor people and give them more choices. But the bottom line is, if the productive output of somebody is $7 an hour, and you pass a law that says they have to be paid $10 an hour, their wages don't magically go up to $10 an hour. They just don't get the job. And yes, you don't see them on TV because these are you can't really photograph jobs that aren't there. But this is what happens. If you go to buy, I don't know if you've ever paid somebody to do something around your house, to paint or whatever. I mean, do you you ask them what they want for the job and you compare it to other companies? Unless you're very different than most people, you don't say, well, Mr. Painter, is that a living wage for you? Don't you have kids in college? We don't do that. So
shouldn't you be asking those questions, dude?
No,
fuck it. Just say,
it's none of my business.
I feel like paying you, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want you to do a good job.
Selfish shit right there, dude.
Really, so you ask people what their expenses are? And
no. But when you have a company as big as Walmart, man, come on.
Have you ever? Well, why is bigness the?
Because they make more money. I can't expect you to do that, Jeff.
They create a lot more value than you do. They actually help more people than everything's win-win with Walmart, because if you're poor, Walmart is cheaper. You can buy more stuff there. That enhances the lives of poor people. It's not just about the people who work there. It's about the
you can turn this all around, though, Jeff. I mean, things are cheaper there because they've run other jobs out of business, and all that's left is the poorer-paying jobs.
Well, the only reason they run people out of business is that people would rather shop at Walmart. I lived in a small town for years. The local stores were horrible. All these people that are...
Walmart has the ability to buy in bulk.
Well, the local stores charged way more than the big box stores charged.
And it's because they can't buy 3 million units at a time.
Well, yes, and people want to buy low-cost merchandise, especially the poor. So that's where Walmart helps them out. I know you don't like that, but that's kind of the way it is.
You're not looking at the other end of it. Walmart is what makes people poor.
No, if you can get more for your money,
they stifle
you're being made
competition.
rich.
They stifle competition. They dominate the market.
Well, if they do so by providing the best value, I don't think that's true. We have Costco, we have Target.
Well, what is the best value? Are you only looking at the price of a product? Or are you talking about the health of your country? Like, who produces more value then?
That's your decision, and the decision of the individual buyer. I have my values. Sometimes I like to buy stuff at Walmart. Sometimes I like to buy at a local store for whatever reason. We all have our own preferences, and if the degree to which we're allowed to act on our preferences makes us more prosperous, and if we can buy the same products or satisfactory products for less, then we're better off, especially poor people.
It's like we have a choice, and if we want to use slave labor or not, it's great.
Well, who's talking about slave labor?
Well,
try living off $7.50 an hour.
That's not slavery, my friend.
I think depending on your country you're in, you're just one step above it, though.
I think slavery would be better.
Well, obviously
we were talking about parasites before. Wasn't that the big scandal where they were showing people how to sign up for social services and making food drives for their employees because they knew that they weren't paying them enough?
Well, again, they were paying them their market wage, and it's a shame that some people aren't productive enough to make a living wage, whatever that might be. Not everybody lives alone in an apartment. Some people are, this is a supplemental job, but some people just aren't that productive. And that's a sad
Jeff, you make a very good case. I think I agree with you, because there's so much money in the economy to pay cashiers, clerks, unskilled laborers. There's no more than so much, and so the more laborers unskilled laborers that enter this marketplace, well, there's just that same amount of money to divide up between all of them, and the more that enter, the each one gets. Simple.
Yeah.
Because it's simple economics.
So what's the answer? Just
Education. Get yourself an education at something, and then go out and find something to do.
But
Do your
that's the thing.
passion.
Like the
Don't
higher
leave
up
the
you
mind
go,
clean.
the higher up you seek, the fewer jobs there are. Like
It doesn't
that's
matter. It's the education that counts. It's not
you're
about the
not,
fewer
you're not
jobs.
getting it.
If
You're
you
not
have an
getting it at all.
education, Lucifer, if you have an education and you can find a job, you at least have the smarts to create your own job, let's say.
that's a good point.
Yeah, whereas an unskilled person, forget it.
Yeah, I think the success rate of starting a new business, you should look that up because it's rather low.
I understand that it's low, but what's the success rate of people who are educated starting a new business versus people who are unskilled, uneducated?
And most of us.
I think that number is actually starting to turn around. I think the people that are coming out of college are actually, well, I wouldn't say they're more or less, but they're definitely farther in the hole while having the exact same job.
Absolutely, but they're very young. They've got 60 years ahead of them, so fuck them.
So I would say somebody asked what the answer is. The answer is, well, there's not the answer. There's not utopia here on Earth. But if you want for poor people, especially, or anybody starting out, you want to give them a break. You want them to have as few amount of barriers to getting into the workforce on any level as is possible. And if you, the problem is if you you don't really look at the big picture. You just say, well, why don't we just magically say that everybody should make X number of dollars an hour? That stuff does not happen in a vacuum, and I'm sorry, it hurts people. It makes people less employable. It's actually causing a lot of outsourcing because the U.S. workers are becoming so expensive as compared to everywhere else in the world. Not just wages, but mandated benefits. Any number of things. It's a legal minefield to get rid of somebody once you've hired them. If you ever look for a job, it's almost like you're dating somebody now. It takes forever to get hired these days. It's just you know, and I guess just to finish up, results are underrated and intentions are overrated, and unfortunately a lot of these things that seem like they're well intentioned are very destructive and have caused the problems that we now have in many cases, and more of that is going to logically create even more problems, more unemployment, and even less poor, or more poor being poor, rich getting richer, and so forth.
So what happens when there's more poor than there is wealthy?
That's probably the case now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of always
But
been the case.
as it gets worse, what's inevitably going to happen?
Usually revolution.
Yeah, it's not a good thing, but the question is, why is it happening? And I would argue that it's because we need to have sound money. All of these. Somebody's. Brojo, I think you're staticking. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of things. Unfortunately, we don't have a free market economy. Two of the main pillars of an economy are money and banking. They're controlled entirely by the political process. Our money is not linked to anything of value. Inflation is really harms poor people far more than anyone else. Typically, if you're wealthy, you can put your money into assets that aren't as prone to devaluation or things like housing, stuff like that. But if you're not getting any interest for your savings, that's devastating towards the poor. So if you want people to be better off and to reverse these trends, you want freedom, and you don't want to be living in a country that's declaring war with everybody on the planet either. That's not good for poor people either.
Well, we're just getting over about the 2-hour mark.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I just got back in.
Yeah, I did too, and then everyone started dropping out again.
Yeah. Might be something to do with the weather.
It's pretty cold up here.
Where's up here, Jeff?
I'm in Maryland.
Oh, okay. I'm down
Okay.
here. You know it's
Alright.
cold in
Looks like
Iran?
it happened again. The server went on you guys first before me. But I think we lost one other person. Sid, maybe come back. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about over, and yeah, the broadcast is still going on the YouTube, but yeah, just again, we're a little over 2 hour mark. We're gonna close up the live part of the broadcast, and I think we covered a lot of good topics. And for those who are listening, we're probably gonna try to make this a regular thing on Thursdays, which is good for Bunto. So don't forget to add him on your circles, and myself. Maybe we'll just go back and forth with each of our channels. But I think every Thursday, yeah, it looks like we're gonna do this breakfast with Bunto and Brother John, and pick a couple of topics. So, any closing thoughts before I close the live broadcast?
Thanks for the invite. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, no problem.
I'll recommend a really small and excellent book to read. I think anybody should read this. It's called Economics in One Lesson. It was written by Henry Hazlitt. Hazlitt was a New York Times economics reporter in the 40s and 50s, back when somebody could actually be a free market journalist for the Times. It's a wonderful read, and if you read this little book, you'll be smarter than most of the economists that you see, at least on television.
Cool. And that's called Economics in One Lesson, right?
in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, Hazlitt.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, guys, and we're going to continue with the off-air broadcast. If people want to join, the link is in the event page and also on the YouTube Live if you want to come join the After Live Hangout. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.